Cześć i witam wam ponownie na moim kanale. My name is Jamie, and in today's video I would like to talk about dreaming in a foreign language. I'd just like to say that I'm no expert, dream expert or anything like that. I just find the topic of dreaming really a fascinating topic. Plus also, of course, I enjoy languages, and so to combine the two together to be able to dream in another language is something that really fascinates me, and it's something that I've been able to do myself multiple times in various different languages that I've been studying. And I never actually was able to dream in Spanish for the longest time, and then a couple years ago I changed my language learning routine, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then all of a sudden I started dreaming in Spanish. It wasn't every single night or anything like that, but it was occasionally I would start dreaming in Spanish, and I was like, this is really interesting. Especially the first time it happened, I woke up like, wow, this actually just worked for me. And since then, I've experimented with other languages that I've introduced. I've been able to dream in Polish, French, and also Japanese to various different degrees. Of course, if your knowledge of the language is quite basic, your dream in that language isn't going to be so good. It's only going to be to the level of what you know that language. And so I've been able to dream in, for example, French only after like a week of learning French. All that I do in order to up my chances to be able to dream in a certain language is that I will read a lot in that language before going to bed. So for example, if I'm wanting to dream in French, I will grab a French book and I will just open up and I will just read and read and read and read, and I will try to read for a minimum of half an hour to 1 hour, like literally just before going to bed. But the time frame isn't really the most important thing, I don't think. But I think what is more important is that you read to the point of when you're so tired that your eyes start to close and you're literally almost like forcing yourself to stay awake. When you're that exhausted from reading in your target language, after reading in, even after 20 minutes, you could achieve this. If it just depends on how long it takes for you to get tired while reading. But when you get to the point of when you're reading and your eyes are like really heavy and you're like struggling to stay awake, what I do in that point is I try to finish off the sentence or the page or whatever, put my bookmark in the book, close the book, put it down, and immediately turn everything off and then go to sleep. And what that does, I think, is that it puts your brain into that language. Like, especially if you're more used to the language as well, then you're more likely to dream in this language. But what I find is that because you're reading, you're coming across like hundreds or if not thousands of words, depending on how long you spend reading just before bed. And I think your brain just switches over into that language, so that just before you go to bed, your brain is processing all of this language that you've just absorbed over the last half an hour or 1 hour or whatever time period it was. And when you're sleeping, your brain is essentially remembering everything that you just learnt in that day, and especially up until the point of when you go to sleep. And as I say, I'm no scientist, but something happens in your brain while you're sleeping. Like, your brain is still very active, where that, while you're sleeping, if you dream quite well, like I dream every single night almost without fail, and my dreams are very vivid. So maybe for me this is a lot easier to achieve than others who don't dream as well. If you dream well, I think you're very likely to dream a lot easier in another language, especially if you do this particular thing. Like, I've experimented with reading just before bed, which obviously, as I say, for me works well. I've experimented with literally just last night, listening to podcasts in Spanish while trying to go to sleep, but I don't like the idea of listening to audio while going to sleep because it really disrupts your sleep and everything, so I wouldn't really recommend that. I've also tried experimenting with watching Netflix TV series just before going to bed, but I think the thing for me personally that works really well, honestly, is just reading books. And I think it's because the amount of literature that you're forcing your brain to be fed, and you're doing it to the point of when you're just super tired and to the point of where you can just collapse because of exhaustion, when you're, at least that's what I do. I read until the point of when I'm so exhausted I just essentially collapse. I put the book down and within 5-10 minutes I'm asleep. But in that 5 or 10 minutes when I put the book down and I close my eyes, quite often I can see a lot of patterns when my eyes are closed. So I see all these patterns. It's sort of like if you close your eyes and rub your eyes, you'd see all these different patterns. It's a little bit like that. But what this is the electrical neurons or whatever they're called. I don't know the scientific word, but essentially when you close your eyes, this is the thing that you can see because your brain is working overtime. Essentially, it's just been fed all this information from you reading a whole ton in this language. and it's just trying to process everything. When you go to sleep, your brain every single night is processing what you've learned in that day or what you've come across in that day, and this is just what it's trying to do, but on an overload, because maybe you don't normally read in this language, maybe you don't normally read as much in this language, or maybe you just don't read at all. And especially if you don't read at all, maybe it only takes a page or two for you to get to this state of being super tired. I have found the more that I've done this, the more that I can read before getting tired, and so I need to read more in order to achieve this particular state. With something like Spanish, where it's a stronger language for me, I'm able to have a bit more of an in-depth dream where like I'm able to actually speak in Spanish and like everything is just within Spanish. In a language like, for example, Japanese, where my speaking ability is not that great and my ability to recall words isn't that great because my total knowledge of the language is a lot less known than for something like Spanish. I have had dreams where Japanese has been spoken, but it's been spoken brokenly, and maybe, for example, like I'm a student in a class learning Japanese, and so I'm able to just say certain phrases or whatever, and so in that way it is dreaming in Japanese, but it's also accompanied with English to make the dream make more sense, I guess. Obviously, dreams are wild, dreams are different for everyone. Different people are going to be achieving different states of dreaming. Some people don't dream as much as others, etc. Like, it's quite a deep topic to go into. That's why I try to preface this by saying I'm not like a scientist or anything like that. Like, I just am essentially laying out my own personal experience with dreaming in another language. But I'm hoping that, one, this would help some of you guys out there, maybe, if you're interested in doing this, to dream in another language. Essentially, try to just read a whole ton in this language before going to bed. Or two, if you got your own experiences and how you like to achieve dreaming in another language, if you could put that down in the comment section below as well, that would be very cool to read other people's experiences with dreaming in other languages. The way that I first discovered this was when I first got Link, an app where you can basically read in other languages. And what I did was I just messed around with like 20 different languages. In the space of like 2 hours, I was reading in all sorts of different languages: Russian, Spanish, Japanese, you name it. And when I went to sleep that night, my brain activity was just crazy. Like when I say I closed my eyes and I could see all of these like lines and patterns, like it was super wild. My camera battery is about to run out, so I need to finish this video. But thank you so much for watching. Dziękuję wam bardzo za oglądanie I do zobaczenia. Pa pa!